My name is Harlow, and I am 33 years old. I never imagined my life would become a lesson wrapped in silence, patience, and a smile that hit a storm. But this is how my story began. It started on an ordinary Tuesday evening when my husband came home earlier than usual. Didn't kiss me hello. Didn't ask about dinner. Just sat across from me at the kitchen table like a stranger rehearsing lines. He said it calmly, almost politely, as if he were ordering coffee. He wanted a divorce. I remember the hum of the refrigerator, the way the light flickered above us, and how my heart didn't break loudly, but cracked quietly. Then he leaned back and said the words that would define everything that followed. I want the house, the cars, everything except the son. My lawyer would later beg me to fight, but in that moment, something inside me went still. I looked at the man I had built a life with, the man who believed love was measured in property and power, and I smiled. I said, "Okay, give it all to him." Those words shocked everyone later, but right then, they felt like relief. Everyone thought I'd lost my mind. Friends whispered, my family panicked. Even my lawyer stared at me like I was throwing myself off a cliff. At the first meeting with attorneys, my husband sat smug, confident, already dividing our life into what he would keep and what he would discard. I watched him list assets like trophies, the house I decorated, the cars I chose, the savings we built together. And when he repeated it again, louder, clearer, as if for the record, everything except the son, I felt a sharp, quiet resolve settle into my chest. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I nodded. The room filled with confusion. My lawyer pulled me aside, whispering urgently that I had rights, that this wasn't fair, that I could take half, more than half, that judges wouldn't look kindly on his demands. I listened, then told her softly that I understood, and that I was sure. That certainty terrified her more than my silence. As the weeks turned into months, negotiations dragged on. Paper slid across polished tables. Pens clicked. Every signature felt like another piece of my old life being peeled away. And yet, I felt lighter with each one. My husband misread that lightness as defeat. He started smiling more, walking taller, telling mutual friends how reasonable I was being, how mature, how easy this divorce had become. He didn't see the nights I stayed awake, replaying conversations, gathering strength, planning without speaking. He didn't notice how carefully I listened, how closely I paid attention to what he rushed past. He believed winning meant taking, and I let him believe that. At the final hearing, the courtroom was cold and formal. My hands were steady as I signed everything over. House, cars, accounts, just as he wanted. He smiled at me across the table. A smile full of triumph. A smile that said he had outplayed me, outsmarted me, stripped me down to nothing. What he didn't understand was that I had already let go of what he thought mattered. When the judge reviewed the terms, there was a pause, a slight narrowing of the eyes, but then a nod. It was legal. It was done. Everyone thought I'd lost my mind. They didn't know what I knew. They didn't know why I smiled and said, "Thank you." Because while he was counting walls and wheels, I was holding on to something far more valuable, something he had dismissed with careless arrogance. When he said everything except the son, he thought he was being generous. He thought he was leaving me with a burden. He had no idea that those words were the moment he lost. Walking out of that courtroom, he was already planning his new life, his new freedom, his new beginning. I walked out knowing that my real story was only just beginning. And if you want to know how a woman who gave up everything actually won, how a smile became strategy and silence became power, make sure you subscribe to the channel now, because what happens next changes everything. When the papers were signed and the courtroom doors closed behind us, my husband walked away lighter, laughing into his phone, already telling someone that it was finally over, that he had won, that I'd folded without a fight. I watched him disappear down the steps carrying keys and titles and pride, and I felt nothing but calm. What he didn't know, what no one but my lawyer and I fully understood, was that the moment he said, "I want the house, the cars, everything except the son," he had unknowingly handed me the only victory that truly mattered. From that day forward, I became my son's sole legal guardian. Not just in name, but in authority, decision-making, future planning, and protection. The agreements he rushed through to secure his assets gave me full custody, full control over education, healthcare, relocation, and inheritance rights tied to me, not him. He didn't read the fine print because he didn't care. To him, our child was an inconvenience, a responsibility he was happy to leave behind as long as it didn't cost him comfort. Weeks passed, then months. He moved into the house he fought so hard to keep, bought new furniture, posted smiling photos online. Meanwhile, I moved into a small rented apartment with my son. Bare walls, secondhand couch, but a peace I had never felt before. I started rebuilding quietly. I returned to work with focus and hunger. I launched a business idea I had shelved for years because it wasn't practical according to my ex. It grew faster than I imagined because desperation sharpens the mind and freedom fuels ambition. Tax issues he never resolved, maintenance costs he underestimated. On top of that, because he had demanded everything, the court assigned all associated responsibilities solely to him. No shared burden, no fallback. When the first legal notice arrived at his door, he panicked. When the second came, he called me for the first time since the divorce, his voice tight, polite in a way that roar of fear. He asked if we could talk, if maybe we could adjust things, if I'd be willing to help. I listened silently, the same way I had listened months before. Then I reminded him gently that he got exactly what he asked for, everything except the son. The silence on the other end was long and heavy. He didn't know yet that my business had begun turning profits, that my name alone now signed my son's future, that opportunities were opening doors he could no longer walk through. He didn't know that the house he flaunted would soon be sold under pressure, that the cars would go next, that everything was slipping through his fingers. At the next hearing, because there is always another hearing, he smiled again when he saw me, confident as ever, until his lawyer leaned on. Then came the moment everything shifted. My lawyer called one afternoon and asked if I was sitting down. She explained that the property he took came with hidden liabilities, debts he ignored and whispered. I saw it clearly. His face drained of color. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered toward me with something new. Not arrogance, not superiority, panic. In that moment, the words from the beginning echoed louder than ever. My husband took everything in the divorce. I smiled and said, "Thank you." Because now he understood what those words really meant. I didn't need the house to give my son a home. I didn't need the cars to move forward. I didn't need his version of security to build my own. I needed freedom. I needed control over my child's life. I needed space to grow without being overshadowed. And I got all of it the moment he underestimated me. Today I watch my son laugh without tension, sleep without fear, dream without limits. I work for myself, answer to no one, and smile not out of strategy, but out of peace. People still ask how I stayed so calm, how I let him take everything, how I didn't fight harder. I tell them the truth. Sometimes the strongest move is letting someone believe they've won. Because when a man measures success by what he can take, he never sees what he's losing.